This is the Under Pressure Podcast. Every week, wherever you get your podcasts, we have guests on to talk about their careers from a different angle. So remember to keep up to date with us on Instagram and Twitter at underpressure1_ and Under Pressure Podcast on Facebook. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Under Pressure Podcast, brought to you via the Inner Sanctum. You can find the Inner Sanctum on all social media platforms, and you can read all the magnificent stuff we do at theinnersanctum.com.au. Now to today's show, our guest played 200 games for both the Cats and the Dons, but 189 of those games down at the cattery, as well as kicking 209 goals throughout his career. He was part of the successful era down at the cattery in both the 2007 and 2011 premierships. Mathew Stokes, welcome to the Under Pressure Podcast, mate.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Not a worry at all. Now, I'd like to begin the show. What are you doing with yourself at the moment?
Well, I've been involved in footy or the AFL system since 2005. So after sort of COVID got through, I thought it'd be a good chance to get away from footy for a bit and sort of step away from that. And enjoy life without football and the emotional side of that. And especially coming back to Geelong, where home is, it kind of felt like you took the wins and losses home just as much as a player when you're a staff member. So I've got two businesses that I run, one in Geelong, one in Melbourne. I do some consulting work here and there with a couple of companies up in Melbourne. And then I work as a Indigenous mentor with A Mentoring, which is about giving the kids at high school and university a platform to be able to be free. So I keep myself pretty busy. I've got two young kids as well, which probably takes up the majority of the time. But the flexibility of what I do has been amazing for the last 2 or 3 years with the kids. So pretty grateful.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Did you always have a passion for this sort of stuff, even during your playing days as well?
Yeah, I'd be the first to admit that I was probably pretty bad at school when I was at high school, and I did get expelled. And then once I sort of started playing, and because I got drafted when I was 21, I always knew that footy could come and go pretty quickly. So always having a backup plan. And Ron Watt, the player development manager at the time, was always into me about making sure I did studies and made sure that I was prepared for life after footy, because in reality, my career could have finished at any time. I wasn't ever our best player in our team, especially that era. So I had probably a better understanding than most that footy can come and go. So I studied pretty much my whole career and got a bachelor in business and a bachelor in management as well. So it's I've always kept an eye on. I think it's something that players these days don't do a hell of a lot. And they probably should do a bit more. But until you find your passion, I think there's no point trying to jumping into something unless you have that passion.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously you definitely had that passion for it. We'll take a turn to the start of your career. Obviously you said drafted at 21. Did you have any injuries that sort of may have given you a setback in your early days before even getting drafted?
Yeah, I started playing league footy when I was about 15 and got my eye socket broken. So that sort of put me out, footy for a little bit. I had, 12 stitches across the eye. I was only 14 years of age. I was at the Australian Academy at the time. And it sort of put a bit of a damper on it. And I think it took me a while to get over it. But when I went to the Eagles in the Sanford, I had a pretty bad back injury, which kept me out for about a whole year. And then the beauty of that was it was able to find my passion away from footy, and that was working at the zoo. Became a zoologist, worked at the Adelaide Zoo for 3 years. And in that time when I was injured, I was able to find that. And for some reason, it sort of made my world a little bit clearer and turned my footy a lot better with having that balance in my life. So I'm probably forever grateful for that back injury, even though it was pretty painful. It sort of gave me it gave me a purpose.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like it's almost obviously it was a bit of a blessing. In as you said, it's one of those things that you may not realise if you don't do the injury. So and then you move on forward with your career. So yeah, no, that's amazing. There you go. Now, early on, as you got drafted, what was do you remember your first major injury when you were down at the Cats?
Yeah, my first injury was in the 2007 granny. I tried to go out for a specky, which probably served me right, and my kneecap popped out. And it was, obviously, I think it was the second, might have been the first quarter, and to get to a grand final, and then for it to pop out, and I could feel how bad it was. Ran off, I got carried off pretty much, and then the beauty of medicine was able to get me back out there, and the doctors kept telling me, you're not going to be able to do too much tonight. This is going to be a pretty painful injury. And I remember sitting with the boys at about 2:00 in the morning at a bar, and all of a sudden my knee just went bad, flared up, and it was a pretty bad experience. But early on, that was probably my worst one. But then 2008, when I had probably my best year, I got OP. And that was probably one of the biggest setbacks, because it not only affected my footy, but affected sort of life away from it as well. Being able to play golf, things around the house, getting off the couch, getting into your car, it all hurt. And it took me probably about 2 years to get over that. So I've been pretty blessed in my career to not have too many injuries. But earlier on there was a couple of setbacks that hopefully got all the bad luck out of the way.
Yeah, no, definitely. Taking you back to that 2007 that knee injury, what were you thinking when you went off? Were you think no chance of getting back on, or you just want to get back on, or what was the feeling like?
I'm pretty close with our doc, so I just said, "Is this an ACL?" And he goes, "Not an ACL," and that was probably sort of helped me sort of get through the next sort of 20 minutes. The doctors were really keen and really confident that if they gave me an injection, it'd be all right. And I just thought the pain that I was in, there's no way. And I genuinely think, the injection helped. I think the adrenaline playing an AFL grand final, we started to win and get a roll on. There was no way I was missing out on that. So I missed out a little bit on the Sunday morning celebrations with the boys for a little bit because of the knee. But yeah, I was getting messages pretty much every hour to get to the hospital. But once you win one, you sort of you worry about the injury for next year after a couple of days. Yeah,
no, that's it. Obviously, it's a lifetime of success, and you can always go back and have those reunions and whatnot. So you probably didn't miss out on too much, even though it would have been quite fun, I reckon. After the first one, for sure.
You're listening to the Under Pressure podcast.
Take us to the rehab side of those things. How were you in general as a rehabber through minor injuries or major injuries? Were you pretty driven and determined, or were you a bit, I just want to get back out there?
I've always been driven. I do definitely believe I was always better training harder in groups and with my teammates, and being able to push, not only them pushing me, but me pushing them back. And I've always enjoyed that competition, and I've always loved the training aspect of football, and being able to get the best out of yourself and a teammate as well. So it was a bit difficult. The groin one was really bad because we had to do a lot of extra recovery, and the only person that had the same injury was Darren Milburn. And me and Dasha are really close. We used to live around the corner from each other, and I used to have dinner at his house every Tuesday. But it got to a stage where we were spending, 4 times a day with each other, and we started getting on each other's nerves. So we had to mix it up a little bit. But it just went on for a long, long time. And I've had issues with it still to this day, with all the injections that I had in there to try and get through 2008. And my grand final that year was, pretty bad. I've joked with Hodgie before that I should probably get that Norm Smith for that day, because I was meant to be playing on him, but I couldn't run. I just couldn't move. And Bomber has always shown an enormous amount of faith in me, and it was just disappointing that I couldn't back that up. But I was in a lot of pain, and my movement wasn't great.
Yeah, for those who obviously OP hasn't been probably not prominent at the moment, can you just quickly talk us through what OP is and how it sort of affects you?
Yeah, it pretty much sort of feels like you can't sort of move out of there, and the pain. It's sort of pretty hard to explain exactly where it is.
Yeah.
But I think you can get the gist.
Yeah.
It's and there's this, and you've got no power,
Yeah.
and it's sort of dead weight. And to get the injection, it's got to go in between one place and another place.
Yeah.
So you have to go into, at that stage, we'll go into ultrasounds to get jabs, twice a week to get through. And they were, bloody painful. But the experience of it was just a nightmare. I mean, everything from going to the toilet, getting off the couch, killed. And it probably took me, probably a good 3 or 4 months to get over it. I couldn't do anything in the off season that year, and I come back in 2010, probably about 4 kilos overweight because of that. So it put me back even further. So it was a tough injury, but something that probably didn't have an effect on me like some other players and their injuries.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Obviously you had sort of Dasher to confide yourself with that one. Did you sort of learn anything off any other guys when you're doing rehab? Maybe, like, obviously you had a lot of great players down there.
Yeah, a lot of great players and a lot of absolute professionals. I mean, Joel Corey is probably the most underrated player in our era, and watching the way that he recovered and got his body right. Tom Harley was another who just did everything to get his body right. So I think at that stage we were just about to get our redevelopment. So our actual plunge pools were bins with ice in it. So our facilities were pretty bad. So majority of the time we just go down to Torquay, and Joel Corey lived across the road. So we'd normally have a coffee at his house and then jump in the water. And I think for me, coming in a 21-year-old, I didn't have time to pick up on things. I had to get them really quickly or I'd be delisted. Yeah. So what I did was found the best trainers, and that was, James Kelly, Joel Corey, Corey Enright, Joel Selwood from day one, and sort of watched what they did and followed. And one thing I always remember about Joel Corey was he always ran on the outside of the lap, and it sort of just became second nature to me to be able to do that. And James Kelly was a guy that if he had a beer on a Saturday night, on a Sunday, he'd go for a run. So then all of a sudden I found myself in the same mentality of that. So you do pick up on things really quickly, but we were just such a competitive group. There was, you could have found that in pretty much all the players.
Yeah, no, definitely. So obviously a great culture down there. So obviously you could pick up so many different things off so many different players. And that's obviously why there was so much success down there during that time, because everyone was just driven and wanted to push each other to sort of the next level. Yeah,
absolutely. I think we were really competitive on the training track. I think that's what made us probably as good as we were. We used to punch on and get into a lot of arguments at training, and it was always the backs versus the forwards, and Scarlo would get angry, and then Moons would get angry, and then we'd go back and forth. And I think that the competitive nature of that environment was what brought us out, what brought the best out of us in the game. And when you're playing against Scarlo, Corey Enright, Darren Milburn, Tom Harley as a forward line, every Wednesday you're getting to play against the best. So by the time you get to a game on Saturday night, you've got, you've already done that all week. So you're pretty prepared for the weekend. So, but yeah, it was competitive. I mean, the amount of blues that we used to have at training. And I think Bomber loved it too. I think Bomber really enjoyed the fact that we had a group of players who just were willing to do whatever it took to get better and win.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, Bomber was a huge sort of player in your career. Tell us what he meant to you, and how he sort of helped you along during your career.
Yeah, I think with Bomber, it was when I first got there. It was a lot of people sort of didn't really talk too fondly of him. He was a grumpy man, and he had he had every chance of blowing a casket at training or blowing the whistle or kicking people off training. But for me, the one thing I loved about Bomber, and to this day I've always respected, was it wasn't always about the football side of things. It was like, you can get a kick and that's great, but are you a good kid? Are you a good person in the community? Are you a good teammate? Because if you're not, you won't last. And that's something that I cherished really early on in my career, was to know that Geelong Footy Club was always about the good people and the human element, instead of it just being about getting a kick and winning. Yeah. But the one thing also too with Bomber, he always made sure that I called mum and dad. He was always onto that. stuff and made sure that you were okay off field. And he'd still berate you in the team meeting, and he would he'd give the best praise I've ever seen. But for some reason, if he sprayed you, you knew that he liked you. So it was kind of like he loves me. So we got along really well, me and Bomber, and it was sad to see him go, but at the same time, I could see why he wanted to get out. He was pretty exhausted by the time that he left.
Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously, he was a great man down at the Cats, and obviously many players owe a lot to him as well as yourself.
This is the Under Pressure podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
So let me talk about the mental side of injuries. I know obviously we do a lot of physical stuff to get back from all sorts of injuries, but how are you mentally when you're doing the rehab for these types of injuries? Were you pretty headstrong, or were you a bit... Yeah,
I think moving away from Darwin when I was 14, 14 and a half, not getting drafted for 3 years, I think they all sort of contributed to the way that I sort of approached my footy. I always had a mentality of, just rely on yourself and it'll be okay. So for me, I always had that, the little man on my shoulder pushing me a little bit harder. So I was always never too bad at training when it came to that kind of stuff. So the only thing I didn't like was just doing it by myself, to be honest. I didn't mind training, but I'd rather someone beside me, training with me. But for me, the mental side of footy was never an issue, because I always had that drive, and I'm 176 centimeters. I couldn't kick the ball very far, and I wasn't very fast, so I knew my limitations. I knew where my place in the team was. So it was pretty simple for me to my mentality about the way that I approached the game, but also how I played.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as you said, you obviously went through a bit of a different path. What would you say to these young guys who don't get drafted straight away? Like, what's the mentality of just keeping at it, keeping with it? Like, how did you sort of process it at the time?
Yeah, it was difficult for me because I was I was a pretty talented junior. Got told I was going to get drafted a lot, which a lot of kids do, and you sort of get lost a little bit. But for me, it was always about not giving up. I'm from Darwin, and my mum and dad sold their house to get up to Adelaide to help me when I got homesick, and it was always about the people in your corner and trying to get there. And I remember to this day I was working at the zoo and got the phone call. Thought it was a prank call. One of the boys was playing a joke on me. Didn't call back, and then all of a sudden it was Bomber and said, you have to be in Geelong in 2 days' time. So, the mentality of kids these days when they don't get drafted, I think more and more players will get drafted mature age. I think especially with COVID, hang around for a little bit longer. I reckon this year they'll do some sort of 10-day contracts where you can come in, and because I think it will hit teams pretty hard, just like the NBA. So I think if you can stick at it sometimes, and it's probably not the right thing, but sometimes clubs are testing you. And I reckon I was tested, and I reckon Stephen Wells was watching me for a while. Bomber wasn't happy. There was a 175 centimeter fat little thing that got drafted, but
That's a bit
I
rough.
eventually wanted. Yeah, that's exactly what Bomber said to me when I got drafted.
Oh wow!
So that was my first introduction to Bomber. But I think you've always got to find what works for yourself as a individual, and for me, it was always about the people who sort of worked with me and side by side and helped me out during my junior days and my family back home to stick at it and try and get there. And eventually got there as a 21-year-old. I definitely think I should have got drafted a bit earlier, but also I don't mind the experience of working full time. These kids now, apart from Joel Selwood at the Cats, I haven't seen anyone from our club who've come in and been able to play from day one. So it's something that I've always thought about, the draft age to maybe be lifted, because I think you do need some experience. These kids are coming straight out of school into a high pressured environment. Maybe it is worthwhile having a year where they can sort of go get a part-time job, do some work, and get some experience in life before they then go to footy, and then all of a sudden their whole life is about AFL.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you're right. They literally jump straight into it after year 12. They're straight into the AFL system, and it's pretty obviously we all, it's a hectic system and everything's going at a million miles a minute. And then look, it's a bit crazy in the end. So maybe something like that will hopefully come in the next little bit of time. I think it'll be very beneficial. Obviously, it was beneficial to you, and I think in the long run, it'd be good for a lot of players. I reckon.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you keep tabs with the Cats at the moment? Are you a watcher of football? You're a lover of watching the game and everything like that?
I'm not a lover of AFL. I've never loved watching the games, even when I was playing. Maybe if I kicked a couple, I might watch the replay. But I prefer NRL. I love the Rabbitohs and love watching them play. I love the Storm. The game, the AFL, I watch in small doses. Yeah. And as a Cat supporter, through and through, blue and white. So you always got an eye on it, especially when you've got really good friends like Joel Selwood and Tommy Hawkins still running around. You can't help but support them. But I think you find yourself, once you get away from being an employee, you become a supporter, and you start to get a bit narky about some things, and you watch and play, and you start throwing your arms, and you start calling this person a name, and then you remember you used to be that person that was out there, and people were probably saying that to you in their lounge room. So, it's something that I love supporting them still and watching them. I hope we can get one more flag so that Hawkey and Joel can, finish that legacy part off. But I think that's what this group's missing. It's, we as a group were able to get the ultimate success, and it brought us closer, and it was our own little piece of legacy. Where this group, they've been so dominant for so long, you kind of need that flag to sort of cement it and bring you a bit closer, and then that legacy piece, because if you don't win one, you're not having any reunions, and it's sort of like wasted. And we've had probably one of the most talented lists you've probably come across in the AFL.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's been disappointing to fall short, but I think we've got one more year left, and then after that, I think we probably, as a club, will need to start to go back to the draft and let Wellesley do his thing.
That's exactly right. Best in the business. So I have no issues that he'll do. I'm a Cats man. I don't think I mentioned that, but lots of faith in the great man for sure. I do have one question. Probably a bit of a sore point. I didn't actually include it in the questions that I sent over to you beforehand. Can you talk us through 2009 and the feeling there? I know it was pretty difficult at the time, and just wanted to get your thoughts on your feeling and how it all was back then.
I get this asked a lot, and if I'm if there's any sort of anger or was I upset, in essence, in 2008 I shouldn't have played. We lost, and as a club we wanted redemption, and as a group we needed that. We desperately, we were a better team in 08 than every other club, but we fell short, and that's what that matters. 2009 for me was about that redemption piece, and even though I didn't play and I didn't get a medal, I felt like I was just as proud to be a part of it than the 7 and 11, because of the fact that redemption. And I struggled through the back end of the year with my groin still from 08, so I wasn't playing the best footy, and I did my groin at one stage, and Bomber just said pretty much, if you can't play this week, you're not going to be coming in for the grand final. And I just loved it that he was honest with me. And Burnsy and Travi Varco, my two of my closest friends ever. So I was watching them play, and they tore the prelim up, and it was disappointing. But I personally don't think I would have been able to play anyway, and I think that was probably one of the things I learned from my weight was you've got to be honest with your body and your teammates, but also your coach. You've got to look your coach in the eye, and I don't think Bomber looked me in the eye for a while after 08 Granny. And so for me, 09, going to him on the Tuesday, he was saying that he's probably most likely not going to go with me, and to then go, mate, I don't think I can play, was sort of something that, the journey and the lessons you learn along the way.
Yeah, no, that's it, mate. Obviously, that would have been very difficult to say. Obviously, you had to make the decision yourself and go to him, and obviously, he gained a lot more he probably gained a lot more respect for you in terms of coming to you. Obviously different with the 08 one. He could probably look you in the eye, and you can see all the scenes back then. He was very happy, and so he obviously did the right thing. Was difficult, but right decision, I think. And then you got to experience that 2011 game as well. So it all comes around in the end.
It does. Karma does come around in football.
That's exactly right.
This is the Under Pressure Draft.
Now, to finish off the podcast, I like to do a bit of a draft. So we go back and forth, and we choose a topic, and thought we could pick our all-time favorite NBA players. As we chatted off air before, you're a big US sports fan, so I thought we'd do a bit of NBA. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, how many players are we picking?
5. So you got 5. It's like a starting 5. You can go if you want.
Starting 5. Oh. I'd have to go Kobe, number 1.
Yep. Lovely, good choice. Look, I'm not gonna leave him there for you. I'm gonna go MJ.
Yeah, you might have struggled if I had Kobe and MJ together.
Exactly.
I'll go. Then I would go Shaq.
Yeah, good call. The LA duo. Oh, I'm gonna go. I'm a big fan of the Jazz, so I'm gonna go Karl Malone.
Karl Malone.
Yeah. I'm a big fan.
He's probably my favourite players when he was up and going, and before he's injured. Derrick Rose.
Oh yeah, nice, very good. Look, he's still on the board, so I'm going to have to go LeBron. He's pretty good.
Yeah, I wasn't taking him, so you're all good.
I mean, I'm not his biggest fan, but look, I can't leave him off. Be a little bit controversial.
Yep. Then I would go Tim Duncan.
Oh yeah, fundamentals. Love watching.
I don't think your team's got any chance of beating one.
I'm struggling at the moment. I'm really struggling. Look, I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna chuck in a Kareem just to
bit
of the sky hook, hopefully over Shaq's block shots, maybe.
So what is that? That's 4?
I think that's 4. Yeah, I think that's 4 each. Yeah.
All right. What do I need? Good point. Shooting, small forward. Ooh.
I think I need a point guard.
He's probably. I'm going to go with this guy just because he's my favorite player of all time. Would be Jason Terry.
Oh, good shooting. Yeah, love that. That pick. That pick. Oh, point guard, all time. Look, I think I'm gonna double up on the Jazz and go John Stockton. I need a point guard, so yeah. I don't know why. It just came to my head. Obviously, he was a bit of a crazy player back in the day with all the assists. But yeah, awesome, mate. Now just to sort of finish off, I just wanted to quickly thank you for jumping on, mate. I really appreciate you giving up your time and sharing all your experiences and insights. And obviously there's it's probably a bit of a downer, probably talking injuries and whatnot, but obviously you've given out a lot of great insight to all the listeners, and really appreciate you coming on for a chat, mate. And hope you stay well.
No worries. Thanks very much for having me, mate.
No worries at all. Now, remember to like, share and subscribe all our socials, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to Matt for joining us on the Under Pressure podcast, and we'll see you on the next.
The Under Pressure podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to subscribe and share it with all your friends and family. And while you're at it, give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at underpressure1_ and Under Pressure Podcast on Facebook. And we'll see you on the next.